All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome in. So we have another Aaron Rodgers report about the breakup with the New York Jets. Another report that is different than previous reports. You know, we had the Diana Rossini report, then we had one from Ian Rappaport that sounded a little different, and now we're getting one from Albert Breer, which sounds a little different from the two previous reports. So, you know, personally, I hope that this is the last video I do on Aaron Rodgers because it's over, right? He's no longer the quarterback of the Jets. There's not going to be a changing of the mind between the Jets and Rodgers, and all of a sudden he's back. Like, it's over. I'm focused on the Jets trying to find solutions at the quarterback position, right? Trying to find that answer, whether it's a short-term bridge guy, whether it's a trying to find that long-term guy this offseason. However the Jets do it, personally, that's where I'm focused on. Right, that's what gets me excited. So let's take a look at this thing. So Albert Breer said that Rodgers did tell Darren Mougey and Aaron Glenn that it was his tentative intention to play in 2025. These things can change, of course, but Rodgers gave the Jets the impression that he had unfinished business to take care of. Rodgers showed plenty of self-awareness in his exit interviews with the team, bringing up on his own the possibility that the team would want a fresh start and showing that he knew the decision on that wouldn't be his own. As such, there was really no attempt from either side at negotiating a third year for Rodgers with the team. Contrary to popular belief, Rodgers did have strong relationships in the building with ex-coach Robert Saleh, team president Jaime Elhai, and co-owner Chris Johnson, among others. And those close to Rodgers did want to do right by him out of respect for all he's accomplished as a pro and the effort he'd given to the Jets the last 2 years. In this case, doing right by Rodgers meant giving him a decision as early as they could. It sounds like a "it's not you, it's me" explanation, but the reality was that the Jets' desire to move on was about them and not Rodgers, and the timelines don't match up. New York, under its leaders, was looking at a deliberate reimagination of its football operation, which was going to be tough to marry with a quarterback playing for this year alone. Part of that is, yes, the larger-than-life presence that Rodgers brings with him. So his effect on and in the media was a factor, if a smaller one. So while there was no ultimatum on giving up appearances on different platforms like the McAfee show, there was discussion on that stuff. For what it's worth, the Jets do believe Rodgers still has bullets left in the gun, and really a lot of this boils down to goals that don't really match up. And he goes on to talk about how if Rodgers were to be brought back, it would be just another all-in, push your chips into the middle of the table type of year. And you know, you look at the bulk of the Jets roster. They're better players: Quincy Williams, Sauce Gardner, Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson, the AVT, Olu, Tippmann. All of these guys are on a much different timeline than Aaron. These guys don't have 1 year left. And again, personally, I think this was the right move. You know, new GM, new head coach, new vision, new system, new coaching staff, new front office. I mean, the Jets are doing things differently this time. Woody Johnson's operating in a different fashion. The Jets are making big time changes within their front office. Rick Spielman was added to the team to finally bridge the gap, but to have that exec in place to bridge ownership and the general manager and the head coach. Right? Someone who's experienced, someone who's been a GM before. The Jets are doing things differently. And really what I think this boils down to is just a series of simple questions that the Jets probably ask themselves, right? Based off of last season, everything being taken into account, the positives, the negatives, the wins, the losses, the McAfee show, the ability to handle adversity, everything. Based off of last season, is it worth bringing Aaron Rodgers back for one season at $80+ million? I think the answer is no. I think clearly the answer is no. I think there are too many risks involved with bringing Aaron Rodgers back. And by the way, if you want Aaron Rodgers back, or you wanted Aaron Rodgers back, that's completely justified. Right? That is completely that's why I love football, right? Everyone is entitled to their own opinion. This is just my personal opinion on the matter. I don't think he's worth bringing back at that price tag for one season. You know, it would be different if we were talking about Lamar Jackson, Pat Mahomes, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, Jalen Hurts, or even if Rodgers was 31, 32. I mean, Rodgers could have been like 35 or 36. I think maybe the conversation would be a little bit different, but again, taking everything into account, the positives and the negatives, that to me is not worth 1 year at $80+ million. It's just simply not. And then you have to bring up the hypotheticals, right? Well, what if you bring Rodgers back and he gets hurt 3 games into the season, and you got to roll out Jordan Travis, you got to roll out Tyrod Taylor anyway. Now you're paying all this money for a quarterback that, you could have potentially, seen out there. And of course, you can make the injury argument for any player in football, but with Rodgers, he's been hurt the last 3 seasons. He is 41 years old, and last season, that was, one of the big excuses in the midway part of the season, right? Jets are experiencing all these losses, and we're getting all these reports. Oh, well, he's dealing with a knee, he's dealing with an ankle. What was it? I think he dealt with a heel in training camp. I mean, is Rodgers going to come back and just elevate his game to another level and take this team to the playoffs? I mean, the AFC being stacked is one thing, but to me, I just don't see it, right? I think there is a really, really good chance that if Rodgers was brought back, the Jets would have gotten 6-7 wins next season. It's not, all of the problems from last season aren't just alleviated because Saleh and Douglas are gone. Now, I'm not saying that Rodgers can't have success in 2025. I mean, man, if he lands with the Pittsburgh Steelers, an established team with an established defense, with an established coach, of course Rodgers can slide in there and, win football games, right? Minnesota, same way. I think there's, a lot of fits out there. And again, the reality is when you ask people, who are the best fits for Aaron Rodgers, they'll start rattling off win now teams, or maybe teams that have like a lot of pressure on them to perform in 2025. And that's basically what Breer is saying here, right? The Jets want to build for the long term, and it's very, very difficult to build for the long term if your quarterback option, who is really, really old and really, really expensive, is only going to be here for 1 season, and it's going to financially strap the team moving forward, even if Rodgers is not with the team in 2026. That's really the bottom line for me. Again, if Rodgers winds up in Minnesota, or the Rams, I could see him, of course, having success. But, with the Jets, where it's just the team is just doing every single thing possible for him. Here are your players. Here's your offensive system. Here are, the coaches that you want. Everything. Last season was everything that Rodgers wanted. Not to mention the failed free agents that didn't work out the year prior, like Billy Turner, like Dalvin Cook, like Adrian Amos. It didn't work. And I think we have to take a look at where the new leaders are coming from, right? Again, we talked about Aaron Glenn. He's coming in from Detroit. When he got to Detroit, Brad Holmes, Chris Spielman, Dan Campbell, everybody involved said, hey, we got to turn this thing upside down. We got to rebuild this thing from the ground up. We're not going to just do this, find the Band-Aid options in free agency. We are going to make long-term moves for a long-term build. And the Lions right now have completely just flipped the script on the rest of the NFL. And they were the 1 seed with all of the injuries that they, experienced last season. So Aaron Glenn has been a part of it firsthand. Darren Mougey, general manager, right? When he starts getting promotions and he's finally working his way up, what recently happened with Denver? They moved on from Russell Wilson. They moved on from Nathaniel Hackett, right? Hackett wasn't the answer. Russell Wilson wasn't the answer in Denver. Hey, maybe Russ goes on to have success in another team, but it's not worth the money. It's not worth the contract that was made previously. So we got to make the long-term play. We'll bite the bullet. We'll eat a lot of dead money, and we'll move forward without him. And we'll try to really build this thing with a long-term view of thinking. And Denver's back in the playoffs already, right? With Bo Nix, with being number 1 in dead money. So, it can be done. It can be done. I'm not saying that the Jets are going to win 10 games next season, but I think this is the approach that, it's kind of like take that step back to take 2-3 steps in the future type of move. But I guess you could push back and be like, dude, like the Jets won 5 games a year ago. In a win now all-in Super Bowl season, the Jets won 5 games. I mean, there were some pretty humiliating losses, right? That midseason loss against the Patriots, flying out west and just getting beat down by the Arizona Cardinals after the Texans win, where there was all this talk, internally that the Jets were, like the turnaround was coming, watch out, where the Jet, that type of stuff that we constantly heard throughout this past Jets regime. Losing to the Buffalo Bills 2 times. I mean, I was at that second game. At one point, it was 40-0. 40-0. It was not fun at all. I'm talking about the game in Buffalo. We could talk about the Steelers loss, the Broncos loss, the Vikings loss, the Niners loss, to start the season off. But those other losses, to me, just it kind of felt like when the Jets were faced with adversity, they just fell apart in one way or another. Whether it was the kicker, whether it was Rodgers, whether it was the coaching staff, whether it was someone else, or multiple blame to go around, right? It was a combination of all three. So I think in the hypothetical, if the Jets were to bring Rodgers back for 2025, that doesn't guarantee anything. It doesn't guarantee anything. I mean, if we get 6 wins next season with Tyrod Taylor at QB, or a rookie quarterback at QB, or Jordan Travis at QB, or Justin Fields, or any one of these, free agent options, Jarrett Stidham, maybe they trade for a young guy. If we get 6 wins, that's an improvement. As crazy as that sounds, that's an improvement off of last season. And what makes it because the Jets aren't in a position like the Raiders. The Jets aren't in a position like the Giants or the Panthers or, one of these other teams that, you're looking at to start the year off. You're like, yeah, it's probably a team that's going to be picking in the top 10. The Jets were thinking Super Bowl, spending, we're trading picks, we're spending money. And they're finishing with the 7th overall pick, 5 wins, and tons of humiliating losses, and a lot of issues along the way, a lot of dysfunction along the way. So to kind of summarize, I think it was the right move here. So let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section on this. Again, hopefully this is probably going to be the last video I do on Aaron Rodgers, because I just feel like the topic is just beaten to death so much. And I'm focused on trying to find solutions and answers for the quarterback position moving forward. But anyway, let me know your thoughts, and as always, go Jets.